This is WCRN Weekend with your host, Pat Rice.
Welcome to the show, and today's topic is going to be about firearms. For the longest time in society, even before the 20th century, there has always seemed to be this sensation, glamorization of guns, weapons. I mean, back in the day, people really needed weapons to survive. If you think about it, cowboys and Indians out in the wilderness, in the New World, they had bow and arrows. That's how they hunted, and that's how they killed any potential threats or enemies. Cowboys, the wild, wild west. I can't even imagine living in those times. But if you really think about it, today is sort of still like the Wild West. Cowboys rode on horses throughout their towns, equipped with a pistol. Nowadays, you just drive through your town in a car, equipped with a handgun. Cowboys had guns to protect themselves from their enemies and potential robbers. Can you imagine traveling back in the days just on horse, and you got stuck up by some robbers on the Oregon Trail? Or maybe some train robbers? Having a gun was your best friend in any situation like that. When someone has a gun or a weapon in their hand, they begin to have some sense of control over the situation. This strength, this courage, this confidence, this power. And the gun can make any man feel like he's in charge. And that's why guns are so deadly and cause so many tragedies, especially in today's society. Originally, guns were made to help those before the 19th century with surviving, hunting, shoot down food source, and in wars. If you didn't have a gun back then, you were in big trouble. If you were out in the wilderness and a grizzly bear came at you and you had no weapon, you better become friends with that grizzly bear real fast or you were going to be its dinner. Whether you were part of the Indians or the cowboys and you needed to go and take over some land, claim some new space, and you didn't have weapons, see ya later. Because the person that did have weapons, the tribe that did have weapons, that civilization that came equipped with gun force and power, were concluded to be the winners. But now, in a more civil society, the everyday person doesn't necessarily need a weapon, even in the worst areas of town. Whether you're in the suburbs or the urban areas, I mean, where is it really that dangerous where you need a gun? Okay, maybe you live out in Alaska, the White Mountains, where you could run into wolves, coyotes, grizzly bears, black bears, mountain cats. And that's when you might need a weapon. Or you have a cabin out there and some intruder comes into your place. That's when a weapon comes in handy. Or you could say you live in a very, very poor urban area where there's bars on the windows. Liquor stores are getting held up every single night. And you feel like you can't walk down the street without getting stuck up or beat down or shot at. Then maybe you need a weapon or really save up and move the heck out of town. But nowadays, it seems like a lot of guns are easier than they should be to get. It seems like a lot of people just want to be packing guns wherever they go. So you can't go into a Burger King without bringing a gun with you. 9 times out of 10, the place isn't going to get robbed when you're ordering your daily mail. You have to go to the grocery store with a gun? What for? Most of these places are relatively safe, even in some of the worst areas of town. And if someone does come in with a gun, and you're not the owner of the store, and you're just minding your own business, most of the time, you're okay. If they say get down on the floor, get down on the floor. There's only really a few individuals that will just shoot someone when they're doing a very small robbery for $50 to $100 in some gas station register. I mean, come to think of it, wouldn't you think that these guys would have learned over centuries that robbing such small convenience stores and even banks isn't even worth it? Because when you get caught, you're going upstate. Say goodbye to your life. And then people come with that counter argument that if so-and-so had a gun during that shooting in that public place, we would have all been safe. That person, if he only had a firearm on him, loaded, ready to go, he could have shot that guy who shot up the show. In times like those, where a venue, where a big public event is going on, and some shooter decides to attack on the people, many are unaware of it beforehand until it happens. And when it happens, everyone gets frightened, they get scared, anxiety goes through the roof, the groups of people become into total panic, and everyone starts losing it. People are running, crying, screaming, ducking, getting down. And thank God I've never been in a situation like that, and I hope you have never been in a situation like that, because I can only imagine that it's traumatizing. But if you really think about it, if you're there enjoying a show, let's say like out in Las Vegas with the Las Vegas shooter during that country concert, but you're enjoying the show, you're dancing with your significant other, then all of a sudden, gunfire pops off. Let me tell you, you are running to the closest exit, trying not to lose your head. And when your mind becomes in a state of panic, it really takes a professional, someone who is trained to be able to deal with situations like that. Like someone who's been in the army, someone that served out in Iraq, out on the battlefield, a police officer that's been in life-threatening situations like that. But the everyday person, it would become a complete mess. Guns would be firing off, you don't know where the shooting is exactly coming from, you just don't have the tactics that some groomed professional soldier our officer in the line of duty might have. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will be discussing about the history of modern weapons. You've been listening to WCRN Weekend with Pat Rice on AM 830 WCRN.
Welcome to WCRN Weekend and your host, Pat Rice.
We are back, and in case you missed it on our last segment, we discussed about the introduction of guns and weapons, how guns and weapons were used back in the days of cowboys and Indians, the beginnings of the New World, where weapons and guns were a necessity for hunting and everyday survival, and how the everyday person might not be equipped with the actual skill set to handle themselves in certain threatening terrorist-like situations. As an example, we used the Las Vegas shooting. Now, if everyone had a gun there, would they be able to take down the notorious shooter who was so many stories high in a hotel building? Would they have had the knowledge on where to look for it? Most of the time, people's minds go into a complete state of panic. Not everyone can be the superhero. But there are quite a few people that are considered superheroes and are truly lifesavers, such as people who served in the Army, Navy, in the line of duty like police officers, even firemen, people that know how to act in pressuring situations where you need to think fast and where you need to act fast and where you need to know certain skill sets on how to attack your enemy in the correct and proper manner to win. On this segment, we are going to be discussing about the development of the modern weapon. Now, modern weapons were beginning to be developed around 1364, in which that was when the first recorded use of a firearm was. 1364. And if you really want to know how far guns go back and where it all started, it actually started back in China, in which the Chinese invented black powder, which is also known as gunpowder. It was a mix of elemental sulfur, charcoal, and something that they call saltpeter, which was or is potassium nitrate. But if the Chinese really wanted to amp up the power of their gunpowder, they would use a wood charcoal that would make the gunpowder that much more powerful. The first war that truly used guns that decided the outcome of the war was in 1453 in Europe, the Battle of Castilian, where the French took out the English, ending the 100 Years' War. Before we had an actual handgun, though, there was the matchlock, in which you would have to light a match to the priming powder to trigger off the gun. Sometimes this took 2 people to do. Compare that to nowadays, all you need to do is pull a trigger and you might have some kickback, but I can't even imagine shooting off a gun taking 2 people. That's just out of mind, out of sight nowadays, especially with all the shootings that go on a daily basis in our society. But even before the matchlock, the Chinese invented the fire lance, which was the predecessor of all firearms. These inventions were later transferred over to the Middle East, Africa, and Europe, where these countries took their own spin on it. Okay, fast forward a few decades and Hiram Maxim invented the first fully automatic weapon in 1885, which concluded to the Maxim machine gun that could fire 500 rounds per minute. And this is when guns became dangerous. This is when fully automatic weapons became weapons of mass destruction, if you really think about it. If these kind of weapons got into the hands of the wrong people, you are talking about devastation and mass destruction. Though these weapons really gave an upper hand for countries that used them for war. The first war to use automatic weapons was the Civil War, and it was a deadly and violent war. The main use of guns are warfare, self-defense, hunting, law enforcement, and criminal activity. And out of all the things I just listed, in my opinion, I have to say criminal activity right next to law enforcement and warfare really ring in the most use of deadly weapons. Guns cause fear and create power for any man that is in possession of that weapon. It's a good thing if law enforcement has guns. It helps put a situation in place. Most law enforcement are not crooked individuals. They are here to serve and protect the people, no matter how many ways and how many times that people want to spin it. Someone who goes into law enforcement has their heart and mind in the right place. Some people take advantage of certain situations because they think that they are above the law. But you know who else thinks they're above the law? Are criminals. Criminal organizations, the mafia, gang members, the cartels. They all think they can do whatever the heck they want. They think that they're above the law. But in fact, no one really is above the law. Not even the law. Because once whatever you have coming to you gets to you, then that's it. Arrivederci. Some of the pros of guns are guns help you in threatening situations, or to take control of a certain situation. Guns help to defend from enemies in war. Though too many arrogant people get their hands on guns, like drug dealers and gang members. An angry young man is the worst person in the whole wide world to come in possession of a gun or a firearm. Young men are too quick to act on their emotions. They don't think about their actions and the consequences. And that's why so many young men fill the penitentiaries. It's in their teen years, their early 20s, where men make some of their biggest mistakes of their lives due to anger, frustration, just not thinking things through. And then when you get firearms and weapons involved, it leads to mass tragedy. they might shoot their best friend, and they didn't really want to or mean to, but did it in the moment due to anger, due to not thinking thoroughly about the situation, about what could come out of it. Too many criminals use guns to harm or hurt people. Guns are often involved with drug trafficking, senseless violence. I am not for everyone to be packing a gun wherever they go. If we all packed a gun, it would be like the Wild Western days. We are up against the clock right now, but on our next segment, we will continue on the cons about firearms in society and how certain things in society influence the casual use of firearms, along with how we need stricter gun rules in the Commonwealth. We'll be right back. You've been listening to WCRN Weekend with Pat Rice on AM 830.
Now, WCRN Weekend continues. Once again, here's your host, Pat Rice.
And we return. On our last segment, we continued to discuss about the history of firearms, which led into fully automatic weapons and how they were used for war, along with the pros and cons of firearms in our society. In this segment, we are going to continue to discuss about the cons of firearms in our society, along with some of the outlets that influence and inspire the casual use of firearms, along with how the Commonwealth, and not just the Commonwealth, but the whole country, should have stricter gun laws. Just this past year, U.S. schools have already faced 11 shooting incidents. 11 school shootings. That is unacceptable. I can remember when school shootings were like a horror story. When you heard about a school shooting happening in the news, it never happened. It was a shocker. Now, school shootings have become a norm in our society. Is more counseling needed? More education on the harms of guns? And do young men need more love and stronger fathers in their households? I think the answer to all that is yes. During the week of January 22nd, 3 shootings have happened at or near schools. 8 more took place in the first 3 weeks of 2018. What a way to start a new year. Only 2 of the shootings in January were later identified as suicides, and one instance was a 32-year-old man who shot at a school bus with a pellet gun. Like, what the heck was that guy thinking? You are 32 years old. Shouldn't you be working? Shouldn't you be at your job, tending to your kids? But nowadays in society, we have all these bums, these millennial bums, and I'm a millennial too. But I get my work done, and I'm not saying that I exactly have success right now, but I have opportunities in which I am taking advantage of them. There are 32-year-old men out there in our country that just sit on their couch all day in their sweats watching rap music videos playing video games. And that is absurd. That is what you call a loser. Here's the complete list of school shootings that have happened so far in the year 2018. And we are only in the second month of 2018. This is absolutely insane. January 23rd, Marshall County High School in Benton, Kentucky. A 15-year-old boy opened fire inside the school, killing 2 and injuring 16. January 22nd, Net Charter High School in New Orleans, Louisiana. Someone driving by the school fired on a group of students in the parking lot. Only 1 boy was injured. January 22nd, 2 school shootings in the same day. Italy High School in Italy, Texas. A 16-year-old boy shot a 15-year-old girl in the cafeteria. He was arrested and she was airlifted to a hospital. January 20th, Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Following an argument, a 21-year-old Winston-Salem University student was shot and killed during a sorority event at Wake Forest University. First of all, you're in college. Why the heck are you bringing guns? You have a bright future ahead. Your parents don't pay for your higher education just so you can go and screw it up by killing someone. You should take that opportunity to learn and grow. I mean, you would think that they would have the knowledge to know how to handle their feelings and emotions and how to have a regular confrontation and communicate with the other party without using violence. Or at least use your fists. No need to bring guns involved. January 15th, Wiley College in Marshall, Texas. Once again, Texas, you are allowed to pack guns wherever you want. You are allowed to carry, which I completely disagree because stuff like this happens. Since I am tight on time, I'm not going to finish the list because it goes on and you already have the idea of it. So now, I'm beginning to question the mental stability in this country. And I feel like a lot of entertainment outlets in our country really influence bad things. I listen to today's rap music, pop music, this pop culture crap. This rap music constantly is about taking drugs, whether it's Xanax, oxycodone, and drinking what they call lean, aka cough syrup. If you want to have cardiac arrest, just do that crap. I hear all these pop singers in their music, they create these catchy trance-like beats, and they talk about depression and how life sucks. Give me a break. We need positivity. And now everyone thinks it's cool to be, I'm depressed, I'm emo, I hate life, I'ma take drugs and not work for anything in life, but still make money somehow because I'm a hustler. I'm dope, man. Yeah, you really are a dope, man. Why don't you go back to school, get an education, a degree, and actually work for something in your life? There's a tally of almost 300 school shootings since 2013. And our country is actually averaging one school shooting per week. That's actually according to a report from a gun control advocacy organization entitled Every Town for Gun Safety. Actually, it should be every country for gun safety, or every state for gun safety, because this is getting out of hand. For an example, to get a gun in the Commonwealth, you need to complete a firearms safety course, complete a firearms identification card application, or the license to carry firearms application, then turn it into your local police department for approval. It's a $100 cost, and the ID is valid for 6 years. That doesn't even include that gangs, cartels, street thugs can purchase these firearms and weapons through the black market. We need a crackdown. It is too easy for everyday citizens to get their hands on these kind of weapons. Not to mention again that this rap and hip-hop music glorifies the use of guns and weapons in their music videos and lyrics. It's cool to be a gangster and commit crimes. And then you got the old-fashioned movies like Humphrey Bogart, the all-American classic man who would shoot down his rivals with pistols in both hands. The all-American man was raised to hold and load a firearm. And statistics have shown that in states where it's a right to carry, there are higher rates of crime. But I am fighting against the clock, and I have to get out of here. But we'll be back next weekend with another episode of WCRN Weekend with Pat Rice on AM 830 WCRN.
This has been WCRN Weekend, and your host, Pat Rice.